Hi, I'm Jim Cherney, and this is Hardline. General Mattis, I am concerned about your loyalty to the United States of America. When you rise to the rank of general, there is an obligation owed to the American people and the thousands of men and women who were directly responsible for your rise. No one person becomes a general alone. I spent a few years in the military. During that time, I was lucky enough to have the acquaintance of a few generals. One of the things I am certain of is their dedication to our system of government and the chain of command. A general is never really and completely retired. You know this. I'll cite an example from history just in case. General MacArthur was a retired general living in the Philippines and running the Manila Hotel. Retired was not quite enough, though. When the President of the Commonwealth called him back to duty to plan the defense of the Philippine Islands, we all know how that went, with him remaining on active duty through the end of World War II and on to his position as ruler of Japan. Later, he was instrumental in the Korean conflict, where he was eventually replaced for not agreeing with the president. Your situation is not uncommon. It has happened in the past. I do not recall any history of MacArthur calling President Truman a Nazi. And as fine a record as you have, sir, you are no General MacArthur. Surely you are aware that your opinion expressed is being used as a weapon against the country you are sworn to defend. This diminishes you as a man and a role model. Marines are embarrassed by your remarks. They are on active duty and have to consider what their mad dog, devil dog, says. You know that. In fact, all the military services must be concerned by remarks such as these. You are absolutely a disappointment to me right now. That may be because you have been taken out of context. I could see that happening. Not agreeing with the president is your right, and you exercised it when you resigned. Now, you are not having access to confidential, privileged information. You don't know the strategic or tactical situation now, any more than any other veteran out there. Your special position, however, as an American general, leaves you with a special duty to our country. The duality of this situation is comedic. If it wasn't such a serious time in our nation's history, surely now that you are retired, you have the right to curse, besmirch even, the character of, and say whatever half-cocked thing you will about the president. Our First Amendment guarantees that to you. At the same time, you have a moral obligation to the men and women of the military and the veterans to behave according to your rank. You, sir, are embarrassing all of us, and I am ashamed of your behavior.
Welcome to Hardline, folks. Major Burdock here, and I got something to tell you about a specific blue check in the name of Sarah Parcak. Is that how we say it? P-A-R-C-A-K, blue check. Now, she's an egyptologist, and she's got a great job. I mean, let's go take a look and see what she's doing, okay? Reconstructing Egyptology, citizens' archaeology from space. I mean, come on, that's really cool. Global explorer, professor, Egyptologist, mom, 2020 Guggenheim Fellow, and she also is working with a agency called Tuesday Agency, Tuesday Agency, for speaking request. This person went on Twitter and decided that they were going to, she draws a picture like a third grader would, and saying, we need to take down the Washington Monument, because that's something that is Confederate. Now, the reason I'm talking to you guys about this today it's irony, it's dichotomy, and it's stupidity, all in one. In the midst of what I'm about to tell you, she boils off, and simply because Donald Trump has something to do with it, says that there should be no space program. Her colleagues feel like, how would their colleagues feel about that? She gets called out because she's asking people to take down the Washington Monument. She gets flagged by the FBI. She comes back on and says, don't take down monuments, obelisks, because apparently she's identified obelisks as something that's Confederate and that has something to do with blacks. But she says, don't take down obelisks in Egypt. Okay, certainly they're a lot older, archaeological significance. I mean, that's what she's in, and fine. And her whole purpose is, wow, you know what? She wants to take down bits of history that she doesn't agree about, but don't take these things down because they're Confederate. Well, I mean, ancient Egypt predates the Confederacy. So somebody ought to tell her that. How could that be a Confederate symbol? And then you've got the problem with, well, I think that, if anybody had a problem with slavery, which is the whole point of the Black Lives Matter movement, which is what this is about, wouldn't you have a problem with everything that she's studying in Egypt? Because all of that was built by slaves. All of it was built by slavery. People literally in chains, building monuments to single gods. And that's okay? We should I wonder what her response would be if I suggested that the pyramids built by slaves, there is no place really in history have we found that slaves have been building a single monument, dying for decades, for generations, to build a single monument for one elite person or their family. I would say that qualifies as some sort of symbol. It goes further. It goes further. And she is absolutely unrelentant, and apparently, and don't get me wrong, folks, I absolutely believe that I'm scrolling through, and I am glad to see that these tweets are still online. They're right here. There's a white picket fence. And you've got, oh wow, how can you do a white picket fence? Because it looks like an obelisk. And a white picket fence, that kind of symbolizes America. It goes on and on and on. And I'm glad it's all here. And here's the original. This is the 3-year-old construction of who the hell is actually going to say that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people on one side and a bunch of other people, and she says we should put rap music. This person has completely lost her head, needs attention, and certainly needs the attention of the FBI. What else are you going to do? Do you understand the amount of rope that it's going to take to ratchet up and pull down the Washington Monument. I mean, it's a huge effort. It really is. You're going to have to get the ropes up there. And she's talking about playing the music and having a great time. But the reality is that people take her seriously. And they decide that they're going to get together and decide that, well, that's not possible. But then they're going to get together. And then they're going to decide, well, we need to do something else. And that's the problem. The something else is what you're seeing right now in your neighborhoods, folks. You're seeing your city hall. You're seeing probably the worst of America right now. And people are apologizing all the way through for this behavior. Bring out the National Guard, bring out the Second Amendment, and bring out the armed forces. Antifa is a terrorist organization. It was declared a terrorist organization. It was declared by the FBI in 2016, under Obama, the FBI declared Antifa a terrorist organization. In 2017, under Trump, Department of Homeland Security declared Antifa a terrorist organization. We're going to take a look in the coming months on Hardline, who's funding them, and why all of this happens right before an election. Appreciate your time, folks. Love you. God bless America.
Hello, and welcome to Hardline. This is Philip with the Goldwater, and tonight we are going to be talking a little bit about the George Floyd situation. Everybody's talking about it right now, but there's some confusing matters that I've noticed aren't getting nearly as much airplay. Especially the little matter, and it's been in the Minneapolis Star Tribune. It's been on CBS News and others. But this club, El Nuevo Rodeo, it's a Somalian club, by the way, that runs a radio station called La Raza, as in the Reconquistador movement group. Absolutely. So both Derek Chauvin and George Floyd were employees at not La Raza radio station, but the club where La Raza radio station transmits outside of. Now, what a lot of people don't know, that much is in the news. The fact that they were both security guards. Chauvin was a busy guy, apparently. He was also a realtor. So what's not mentioned is the fact that El Nuevo Rodeo has been under multiple investigations since the early 2000s, and is an alleged front for Somalian terrorists who are suspected or have been suspected of laundering money. Now, during the whole coronavirus lockdown, the best way to launder money is with a failing business or a cash-only business. Whether it's a literal laundromat or a strip club or a bar. People pay in cash a lot of times in bars. So it's suspected that this place was involved in money laundering. And so it's interesting that George Floyd was caught with counterfeit bills. Another little thing that I find interesting is we've now also got at least 4 conflicting autopsy reports. The one I find most confusing, by the way, is, and he was on fentanyl too. Now, I mentioned this to a nurse friend of mine, and she pointed out what I already knew. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Doesn't fentanyl have an extremely short half-life? How is it they only found out he's on fentanyl, which is gone out of your system in a few hours, days later? So there's a lot of mystery surrounding this whole case. And unfortunately, I think we will never get to the bottom of them. my personal theory, if we want to get conjectural here, and hey, I don't see anybody stopping me, so we're going to get conjectural here. If you remember the Iran-Contra situation, if you remember Gary Webb and the Dark Alliance series for the newspaper in Miami, it's no secret that whether it was Vietnam in the early 70s, guarding opium fields in the Emerald Triangle, or trading guns for bags of cocaine with the Nicaraguan Contras in the 80s, or of course the fact that now we're guarding the poppy fields in Afghanistan. Fun fact, I'm going to digress just for a second. That's just a fun fact here. Hamid Karzai, the guy that we put in charge in Afghanistan, we were already in talks with that guy to build a pipeline. This very pipeline, why did we pick this guy? I don't know. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that his brother was the biggest opium lord in Afghanistan. So what I'm getting at here basically is, I think that there's more to this than a racial issue. I think that George Floyd was killed either because he was considered a threat to the operation. They thought that he was going to expose them, or perhaps they were afraid he was going to be a whistleblower or leaker, and so he had to be put out. But yeah, that's just my take on the whole George Floyd situation. And by no means is police brutality right. But there's more to this story than just police brutality. This guy shouldn't have been a cop in the first place. This is not his first, I'm going to go there, lethal rodeo. He was actually 3 different occasions. He was involved in some kind of an incident that involved somebody's death. In fact, Democratic presidential candidate Amy Klobuchar was AG at the time, at one of the times that he was let off. And that's the only reason this guy was still wearing a badge. Now, could it be that he was being protected because, once again, we know that the CIA's been running drugs for 40 years. I have a feeling they haven't stopped. Could this guy be more than just a dirty cop, but a dirty cop in service of the feds? I don't know. I'll leave that to you to decide. Thank you so much for listening in, and this has been Hardline.